Hello, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening, everybody.
Hey guys, how are you?
Good.
Good evening.
There's a pop-up market happening at Friday Harbor starting this weekend and going every Thursday through Sunday till Christmas. So I've asked them to send you guys the information on it so you know about it.
Is it a Christmas market?
Yeah, I'm gonna have a pop-up starting, yeah. So
Okay.
and they've asked me to come over maybe and I could take down the Christmas lights after Christmas.
Evening, everybody. And it.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just waiting for the thumbs up from our technician at Town Hall to make sure we're good. There we are, we're good. Welcome members of council, staff, and members of the public to our joint council and committee of the whole meeting for Wednesday, November the 24th. Tonight's meeting is being audio, video recorded and live streamed on the town's YouTube channel and shall form part of the record, which will be retained in accordance with the town's retention bylaw. And for more information on that bylaw, you can contact the clerk's office. The town of Innisfil acknowledges that we are situated on treaty land that is steeped in Indigenous history. We also acknowledge that this land is the traditional territories of the First Peoples of Turtle Island. It is shared between the Anishinaabe peoples of Beausoleil First Nation, Chippewas of Rama First Nation, and the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation, and we thank them for generations of stewardship. This meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people, and as settlers, we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. The town acknowledges the forced sacrifices that are the foundation of Canadian society today. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. So, the first item on the agenda for this evening is open forum, and we've had no people register for open forum this evening. So next we will move to the approval of the agenda. We have had some amendments to the agenda since it was published a week ago on our website. And so I will be looking to a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as amended with the additions as on the screen. Moved by Deputy Mayor Davidson and seconded by Councillor Van Berkel. All those in favor? That is carried. Next on the agenda is the disclosure of interest. Is there any members of council who would like to declare a pecuniary or conflict of interest on tonight's agenda? Seeing no hands, if one becomes apparent to you during our conversation, please let it be known at that time and we will make the clerk's office aware. So item number 5 is we do have a presentation this evening. It's from our Community Needs Assessment Update, and it's Jennifer Lloyd, our Community First Associate. So welcome, Ms. Lloyd, and we welcome you here and look forward to your presentation. And please start whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor Dolan, Deputy Mayor Davidson, members of council, staff, and the Innisfil community. My name is Jennifer Lloyd. I use the pronouns she, her, and I'm the town's Community First Associate. I'm pleased to be here for the first time tonight to present you with an update about the town's Community Needs Assessment project. I'll provide a brief overview about what the Community Needs Assessment is, what's been accomplished in 2021, and our next steps. Next slide, please. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, the community experienced a lot of disruption and change. To support the One Town, One Team and the community in responding effectively, the town led the development of a community needs assessment in the spring of 2020 to gather local data about residents' needs. After 2 surveys and a series of roundtable sessions, 65 recommendations were collected under 5 areas of community concern. These 5 areas became known as the 5 pillars of the community needs assessment and include mental health, access to information, economic security, which represents needs related to income, housing, childcare, and food, employment, and community building. I'm happy to report that since August 2020, 74% of the 65 recommendations have been implemented or actioned, and many of them have been made part of the town's ongoing work to address community needs. Since Council's last update in December 2020, staff have initiated many new projects, services, and initiatives to address the community recommendations. The staff report included an attachment with a detailed list, so I'll be brief in highlighting just a few initiatives under each pillar tonight. Next slide, please. To support residents' mental health in 2021, the Innisfil Community Foundation granted the Canadian Mental Health Association with $72,000 to fund their free virtual peer support program. Leisure Services hosted a free virtual Speak Your Mind Mental Health Summit for approximately 300 youth ages 13 to 21. And Health and Wellness launched a Youth Mood Walks pilot program, promoting physical activity in nature by improving youth's physical, mental, and social well-being by taking group walks. Next slide, please. To increase access to information, the Innisfil Idea Lab and Library secured funds to increase digital literacy programming for seniors and purchased lendable tech, such as laptops, tablets, and assistive devices. To combat the spread of misinformation about COVID-19, the town's communications and community engagement team shared information from reputable sources on social media and print resources and through Emergency Operations Center updates at weekly council meetings. We also increased production of print resources to address barriers to digital information, such as the Supporting Seniors brochure, which is created bi-monthly and highlights important information, programs, and services available to seniors. Next slide, please. Health and Wellness has launched several new food security initiatives to increase access to nutritious food this year, including the Innisfil Community Fridge. Due to high demand and thanks to the consistent support of council and the community, the Troy Scott Community Fridge expansion will bring 2 additional fridges to Innisfil this year. The town's planning team is working on a housing needs assessment survey to inform the development of a strategy to address the community's housing needs. And in fact, council already took a step to address these needs earlier this year by approving the 3rd dwelling unit bylaw, increasing the supply of rental units in the community. Next slide, please. To support the employment pillar, the Innisfil Idea Lab and Library provided youth and adults with opportunities to learn about the education and employment supports available from community organizations. Economic development continued to support local businesses by launching an Innisfil Accelerates monthly newsletter and sponsoring a special Shop Local edition of the Innisfil Journal, offsetting advertising costs by 80%. Stay tuned for another Shop Local special holiday edition coming this December. Next slide, please. Finally, to support community building, the town's operations, leisure, and communications and community engagement teams worked with residents, local artists, and community organizations to enhance outdoor spaces, such as the Pump Track and Pride Crosswalk at Innisfil Beach Park, and the Tree of Life Labyrinth in Cookstown. Community champions organized initiatives such as the Every Child Matters display at Town Hall, the Innisfil Farmers Market's Artisan Fair, and the Innisfil Historical Society's Pumpkin Walk, which were supported by council and staff by providing space, promotion, and resources. Finally, the town and the library partnered with local business Tempo Plastics to offer the popular Seeds of Hope program, brightening people's gardens and spirits during the pandemic. Next slide, please. So none of this would have been possible without the support of council, residents, local businesses, service providers, community organizations, and staff. In April 2021, the town established an internal community-focused working group called the Community First Team, inspired by the vision from the town strategic plan, Community First, Future Next, Balance Always. This team includes staff from health and wellness, leisure services, planning, operations, people and talent, finance, customer service, economic development, clerks, legal services, IT, and the library, and is led by staff from the communications and community engagement team. The role of the Community First team is to communicate new projects and initiatives that align with the 5 pillars, work together to address the recommendations from the needs assessment, and share information and feedback from the community. These folks have become champions of the community needs assessment and continue to find new ways to adjust business as usual. Next slide, please. So where are we now? This fall, staff are re-engaging the community to check in about what the town's done well since the 2020 research, how things have changed for residents since then, what their priorities are as we move out of COVID-19 response and into recovery, and which community assets will be important resources on our journey. We resurveyed residents over a period of 6 weeks and conducted in-person engagement with an emphasis on meeting residents where they are by outreaching in community spaces such as the Innisfil Farmers Market, the library branches, Rosardo Health and Wellness Center, Sandy Cove Acres, Guilford Local Eatery, and local parks. Residents shared with us that they were happy to see staff out in the community, in different neighborhoods, and listening to residents' stories and perspectives about COVID-19 and community recovery. Mental health, social isolation, income, food insecurity, and access to services remain top priorities and concerns for residents. However, with the evolving context of the COVID-19 pandemic, other needs and priorities are emerging as new or increasingly important. Next slide, please. We continue engaging with the community through interviews and listening sessions, and I'll be back with a comprehensive report with our findings when engagement and data analysis concludes. The findings of our re-engagement will support the development of a truly made in Innisfil path to recovery. Staff will explore opportunities to integrate our recovery efforts into existing town strategies and community initiatives, such as the Community Health and Wellness Strategy and the South Simcoe Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. Our next steps will also include the creation of a community neighborhood resilience strategy, which was approved by council in December 2020 and was a significant step in demonstrating the town's commitment to realizing our vision of community first. In this spirit, this strategy will aim to connect residents at the hyper-local neighborhood level, invest in building civic engagement and community leadership capacity, create empowering spaces and opportunities for residents to meaningfully participate and lead, and coordinate community networks to facilitate the identification of community needs, assets, and solutions on more of an ongoing basis. The town will have an important leadership role to play in connecting staff throughout the One Town, One Team with residents, community partners, and stakeholders from different levels of government, as well as strategically facilitating, supporting, and leveraging these networks to achieve our collective community goals. Through my community development work with Action for Neighborhood Change in North York, I saw how these types of networks really promote community ownership and leadership. So I'm excited to see how the community can come together and, in true Innisfil fashion, develop really innovative and inspiring solutions that will help Innisfil thrive. Next slide, please. Sorry, can we go back for a second? Thanks. Thank you. As a result of our efforts to address community needs during the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen increased internal collaboration and information sharing, strengthened relationships with residents, businesses, service providers, and community organizations, an increased emphasis on supporting and working alongside the community as they take on leadership roles. And I think we've seen more clearly than ever that residents, businesses, and community organizations want opportunities to not only help out, but to also lead, and that they have been and will continue to be essential community builders. The pandemic has exacerbated community issues that existed prior to COVID-19. We've seen this trend across the country and across the globe. The pandemic has also highlighted the need to address these issues for our collective health and well-being. With that challenge comes a potentially once-in-a-generation opportunity to not simply bounce back from the COVID-19 pandemic, but to instead build back better, stronger, and more resilient. Innisfil's strengths and assets, as well as the community's motivation to support one another and continually evolve, means we're well positioned for a just, equitable, and sustainable recovery that promotes community resilience and ensures we're prepared for future emergencies and crises. Next slide, please. I'd just like to finish by giving a special thanks to Council, to staff, the Community First team, and to Innisfil's community for supporting the community needs assessment. This project success truly wouldn't be possible without the enthusiasm and the teamwork of everyone in this community. During the pandemic, Innisfil decided to put its community first, and we've set a strong foundation to move forward, recover, build resilience, and achieve our strategic vision of community first, future next, balance always. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lloyd. That was a great presentation. I think Council would agree, and we welcome, I know you've been here since early summer, but this is your first time officially delegating to Council. So we really do welcome you and welcome the work that you're doing and all the important work that you're doing to wrap your arms around the residents of Innisfil. So thank you so much for that. Questions or comments from members of Council? Councillor Eisses.
Thank you, Worship. Just a comment. I wanted to also publicly thank one of the fine Innisfil businesses in Innisfil, and especially Ward 1, Temple Plastics, for their sponsorship of the Seeds of Hope campaign. Temple Plastics has been a great partner with the town in various events, and I just wanted to highlight that for everyone.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Thank you. I really appreciate, Jen, the presentation. I just had a question come in this week from a constituent somewhere, and they were asking that, during the winter, we closed down some of the paths and trails that we have. And they were inquiring if maybe they could get a group of neighbors together to sort of shovel their paths or stuff like that. I didn't answer because I don't know the legalities or the impacts of them doing that. But it's just something you may want to keep in the back of your mind, that you may get approached about doing that, especially in our parks. They would like to help with the trails if they can assist. So I'll leave that with you, okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I know that there is winter maintenance on some trails, like the Rotary Trail behind Town Hall, but certainly you could advise that resident to send in an inquiry, and I'm sure they'd give them a list of all the trails that are open. Other questions or comments? So I'm just hoping that Ms. Lloyd, maybe you could share a copy of that presentation with members of Council, because it's really nice to have all of that in one place. So we all have moments where, yes, that was wonderful. The lighting of the Tree of Hope last year was great, but all of these things you forget about the totality of all of the events. So it'd be great to have that, each of us, so we could have that for our reference. So thank you for that. So with that, then I'll ask for Councillor Eisses and Councillor Orsatti to move and second the recommendation to receive the update with thanks. All those in favor? That is carried. Next, under delegations, we have Mr. and Mrs. Mata, who are here to delegate regarding item B1, the Innisfil Heritage Report that's on tonight's agenda. So welcome, Mark and Janessa. Please feel free to turn on your camera, and welcome to Town Council. And whenever you're ready, please feel free to start.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us. This is our first council meeting. So I appreciate everyone or those involved accepting our delegation request for today's meeting. My wife and Janessa and I moved into 7001 County Road 27 exactly 1 year ago this week on November 21st, 2020. With our 2 kids, both under the age of 4 and 1 more on the way in May, we wanted to move closer to family and to settle down from the stops we made along the way. My wife grew up in this town just down the road, and my family north of here in Barrie. As you can imagine, there's a lot that ends up coming on people's plates when they make a big move. And in our case, within 2 weeks of moving in, we received a letter from the Heritage Committee with the request to list our home onto the Heritage Registry. One more thing that we never necessarily anticipated happening when we made the decision to put an offer on this house. Now, to be clear, we definitely understand why the Heritage Committee exists, understand the responsibility in this community, which we definitely want to have and continue to see their impact. Nonetheless, it came as a surprise considering that even when we made the purchase, we had a realtor at the time, the Ferris team, run a search to see if this house was ever considered for the Heritage Registry, to which the owner at that time insisted that it wasn't. We're a young family that made the purchase as both a means to call Innisfil home, but equally as much as an investment, like I'm sure anyone that purchases a home in today's market especially. On the latter, we believe that this will devalue our investment, considering how old the home is. There will absolutely need to be future renovations to be completed in order to keep it up to date and maintained. We have every intention, to be extra clear, to preserve this home's classic architecture and historical design. So much so that we've already spent almost $100,000 in updates since we've moved in, both to make it more efficient with new windows, matching the curvatures of the original windows that were here for the last 100+ years, and livable with new closets with new matching trim and baseboards with the help of a local carpenter. In January, we attended our first of 3 Heritage meetings that would span 11 months until today, sharing our request along with that of our real estate agent, Thomas Ferris, who agreed that the Heritage designation would absolutely restrict what current and future owners could do with the property, likely delaying a possible sale altogether. Happy to share his letter to us on this topic over email after this meeting. On top of all this, as much as we very much hope and plan to call this place a forever home, we just don't know what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. Like I'm sure no one expected what's happened in the last 2. Before COVID, I decided to leave a stable job at a high growth software company based out of San Francisco to pursue building a business of my own with 2 good friends of mine. As you can imagine, building a business, or rather attempting to, is not the most stable role to take on with a young family, unknowing to where it could take us, depending on the needs of my colleagues and future customers. Add COVID to the mix, and there are even more unknowns. Add a Heritage Registry listing, it could very well make it almost impossible to sell our house one day in the time frame we'd likely need to if that's what we had to do. I'd appreciate the council's consideration not at our home as a listed property on the register, and that our concerns are not taken for granted as a young family has chosen to make Innisfil their home. We really appreciate your time, and happy to take any questions from anyone that's on the call.
Thank you so much, Mark and Janessa. Questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Mark and Janessa, for coming out and giving us this information. As you probably know, I am on the Heritage Committee, and just wondering why you feel that it would not be able to sell, or you wouldn't get a good price later on. This is a home that is valued by many, and what you can do inside is fine. You don't have to keep it an old farmhouse or anything. You're you can do your decorating and painting and whatever and make it look wonderful. It's just that the exterior of the home, I think, is what's more important, is trying to keep that to what the original home looked like. And there's a lot of people out there that would just love to live in that house. So I don't think you'd have a problem selling it. But don't be afraid to do decorating inside, as long as it's not freaky and whatever. But you have your tastes, and we understand that. So
Yeah, no, I completely understand the rules of the designation and what would be allowed or not. Ultimately, if you look back at the listing of this property over the course of the last decade, there was a period of time where this house was listed on the market for over a year and a half, preserved all of the original qualities that we're talking about today, but ultimately did not sell. It took a lot of time there, and we knew that going into this process, that old houses, especially that would involve a lot of potential work, could be something that maybe isn't ideal for a future homeowner. Times have changed, but we're also not necessarily anticipating that we would sell this house anytime soon, to be extra clear. It's just a function of being, low risk and ultimately just choose to do whatever we need to do depending on whatever happens with my work, whatever happens with Janessa's work, or wherever it takes us ultimately. And so it's just not adding one more thing to the mix that we just feel as though will likely delay it, if that it were to ever come, which is why we would ideally not like to have it registered altogether.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And just remember that you've got a good property there, and people are looking for property for their home, not cookie cutter homes that we're getting nowadays. So enjoy what
I'm
you
sure,
have.
and you know what, we enjoy it. It's just, this is a surprise that we didn't anticipate at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I hope that you can respect that this is kind of our perspective coming into this as the homeowners. And, if it was another person's home, maybe we'd have a similar reaction to you, but if it's not your own, you kind of have to feel differently about it as well.
True. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Thank you. Hello, Mark and Janessa. I'm just looking at the changes that was made in the report that we have in front of us. It looks like there's been a change to the types. I'm just going back to the very beginning here. So what I'm reading here, the committee recommends that council add 701 blah, blah, blah to the municipal heritage register as a non-designated listed property. So before, there was a change in the provincial aspect of it. I'm just trying to find it here. You could be, like, my property is designated as a designation on the historical registry, but it's not listed. But it seems like the province, whoever wrote this out, I'm missing half the words, so I'm like, committee members advise that property owners of recent changes to the Ontario Heritage Act, that's the part I only have half the word, respecting listed properties as listed, non-designated properties to the Municipal Heritage Registry. So it sounds like the province has made a change if you're a non-designated and listed. Is that correct? Can somebody clarify that for me?
So I'm going to ask Ms. Nordstrom to jump in here and clarify.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor's question. So there have been a number of changes to the Ontario Heritage Act, but there's always been a distinction between listing and designation, and that continues. What has changed is that a property being listed, an owner does get notified of that listing and has the opportunity, as is being done by the matters this evening, has the opportunity to voice an objection to it. And ultimately, council will consider that objection and then can move forward with the listing or not. And then the other changes to the Ontario Heritage Act have to do with if an application comes in for a permit to demolish or alter the property, and that would be the exterior of the property, not renovations to the interior. But if there does happen to be an application that comes in, then there are certain timeframes that are put in place to for the town to decide whether or not to up that listing to a designation. And at that time, the MATAs, if they're still the property owners, would have the opportunity to appeal that designation to the Ontario Land Tribunal, which was formerly LPAT, which is formerly the OMB. So those are some of the changes to the Ontario Heritage Act. If that answers your question, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, so my question is, we're asking for this property to be listed, not designated. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So listing is not a problem. Like for my property, I know I've had it up for sale before, and that wasn't a concern of anybody, but it's when it gets designated, that becomes the concern. So in this report, from what I'm reading, we want it to be listed, not designated. Is that correct?
That's correct. That it be listed as a non-designated property on the municipal heritage. So listed, not designated.
So there's a difference there, Mark. It's just on a list. I don't think it would deter the sale of the property. Now, if you did sell it to a developer and they wanted to tear it down, I think Cookstown's currently dealing with a similar situation in the Heritage Committee. And I've put restrictions on the new developer for building what they're preparing to build. So I think maybe the real estate agent might have misguided you on this one a little bit.
No, my understanding though is that this is like step one of the process. It first has to be, please correct me if I'm wrong in understanding this, but it first has to be listed for it to then be designated. So we're requesting ideally that it doesn't get listed, so it doesn't get to that second step of the process, which is why we're opposing that tonight.
Can we get clarification on that, Mayor? That it isn't the next step, that it like.
So if you have questions or comments to Mr. and Mrs. Mata, now would be a good time to do that. And then what will happen is we will receive this delegation. And then when we get to that item in the agenda, then we can debate the report further. And we invite you and Janessa to stay on the live stream if you wish, and just listen to the debate. But we would need you to turn your camera off at that time. But in the meantime, sure, if there's further questions and comments for Mr. and Mrs. Mata, then now is the time. Councillor Orsatti.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to Mark and Janessa for your delegation. It is always an emotional situation to buy a house, and you know, many do get concerned with the heritage. My question is your concern just with regards to resale, or is it in regards to being it seems to be more in resale of it in future as opposed to any renovations to the home. Is that correct?
Mr.
Yeah,
Mata?
that's predominant. That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
We have no intention to destroy or do any major changes, especially to the exterior, in the near term or ever for that matter. I am the least handy person you can ask to do something like that anyways. But nonetheless, we're, you know, as someone who's kind of has a long-term mindset, I typically think about what's to come in the future, and I don't know. And so it's really to prevent any obstacles along the way.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions or comments? Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks very much for the presentation, Mark and Janessa. A quick question. It seems that in your description, you're concerned of it going from listed to a designation, which is the issue. If I'm not that familiar with the process now, and we'll have a debate on this. But my question is, if it was just listed and without the designation, is that something that you're would be acceptable of, or and because I don't know what the process is, I'm not too sure whether or not you're forced to go down that road, or whether or not you can just list it and leave it as a listed property without going to designation.
Yeah, we'd prefer for it not to be listed, unknowing what's to come or change in the process. And I think it's maybe clear that I'm not an expert in this system either. I haven't sought external counsel on it besides our real estate agent and some minor research online. But if I had the choice, I'd rather for it to not be listed altogether.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions or comments? If not, I will ask for Councillor Waters and Councillor Fowler to move and second the delegation. And thank you both for your time and wishing you well on your growing family. All those in
Thank
favor?
you. Have a good night.
Thank you. And if, like I said before, if you want to stay on, please feel free to stay on. All those in favor, sorry, and opposed? That is carried. Thank you, everyone. Next is updates from County Council, municipal associations, conservation authorities, any committees that you sit on with for the community. I'd be happy to hear any updates. Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, we had our in-services meeting this week, and basically we went over our bylaws that need to be strengthened and looked at, and the water intake, the cleaning of the water intake. There was an overrun in the budget there, a substantial overrun of about $145,000 because they ran into much more than what they had anticipated, which nobody liked very much, but we had no choice. We have to keep that water intake clean, and it's about what I think they said there was about 2/3 done. They had another third to go on it, and otherwise, I think there was, like I said, there were bylaws on what we can do with the water lines and what people can do and what they can't do with water boxes. Some of the nobody else can touch the water system other than in services, that type of thing. It was more a wrap up. Our budget is coming up in the next meeting for in services. So this was sort of a review of the bylaws and what was going on and some of the overruns, and an update on Killarney Beach, and which was completed. And Tom was very happy that it was completed because he said he never wanted to go under a railway track again, and I don't blame him. And I think that's basically the highlights. We had an update on Pump Station 2, which is going to be completed probably in February now instead of December. And that is basically because of supplies, that aren't readily available. And I think one of the reasons is that they delivered stuff to Mayor Dolan's place rather than to the site. But it's coming along well. So everything is good. Everything is the way it's supposed to be. The inspections that were done, they were all good. So we got clean drinking water and our toilets can still be flushed.
Thank you for that, Councillor Van Berkel. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Worship. Just a quick question for Councillor Van Berkel. The inlet problems that in-services had, was that due to zebra mussels and quagga mussels?
Yes, it was. It was zebra mussels is the biggest culprit there, and they're not that easy to get out. Apparently, it takes quite a bit more effort than they anticipated to get out, and there were more in there than they thought.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And supply chain issues still causing havoc across all of our One Town, One Team. Councillor Arsadi.
Thank you. Just a quick update from the Traffic Safety Committee meeting. We've received a lot of positive feedback on the improvements made to St. John's and the 7th line. And it just goes to show that how working together with staff and South Simcoe Police and recommendations that we can improve a corner. And it's been a very cooperative process, and hope to see that continuing. And South Simcoe Police are working on their I believe they're warning letters for those cameras.
Thank you. Any other committees of the corporation? Deputy Mayor, did you want to update on the county council meeting yesterday?
I think it was the shortest meeting we've ever had. And you were chairing it. I don't have anything at this time, Your Worship, that I can wrote down. So thank you.
Thank you. Just, I guess what I would just add to that is we did approve the county budget yesterday. So the county budget, it's over a $650 million budget. It's we had about 40 new hires, but all of them in first response areas. So lots of paramedics and PSWs, and that equates to about a 2% increase on the county budget, which is about $5.50 per 100,000 of assessment on your home. So I wanted to report that out, and also report that I was at Police Services Board meeting today, and they will be before us, I believe, at the next meeting with their budget. So we look forward to that. So seeing no other committees to report out, we'll go to our consent list. So I would ask that I'll read out all the items that are on our agenda and the staff recommendation that goes with them. And if someone wants to pull that and add it to the committee, the whole agenda for further discussion, that's great. If it doesn't get pulled, then it just means that at the end of the meeting, we will confirm the recommendations that are printed in the agenda. So we'll start with item A, which is adoption of minutes. We have the special council meeting minutes of November the 10th and the regular council meeting minutes of November the 10th. Next is B, which is reports of various committees. B1 is the Innisfil Heritage Advisory Committee meeting. Councillor Nicol.
Your Worship, I wonder if we could refer that, just to have a further discussion on that one property that we discussed earlier.
Thank you, will do. Item B2 is the Innisfil Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting. B3, the Remembrance Day Committee meeting. Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a comment. I want to thank Mr. Jacobs and the committee of, the Remembrance Day Committee for all the hard work they did. I think they did a great job, and some of our councillors, that Councillor Fowler, and for a Zoom or YouTube Remembrance Day, I think it was very well done, and I want to thank everybody, the entire committee that was on it and helped. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Van Berkel. I have been remiss in when we were in item under item 7. We had an emergency operations center update, and I skipped right past them, and I apologize. So I'll ask now if we could have an update from the EOC, and then Council, I'm sorry to mix everyone up, and then we'll go back to the consent item list, starting with Councillor Van Berkel. Ms. Ray, my apologies.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. I should have turned my camera on. I just wasn't sure. So through you to Council, we'll start with updates from the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit. Modeling shows that COVID-19 transmission is up across the province, primarily among the unvaccinated, but hospital admissions are not up as of yet. Vaccination continues to show high degrees of protection. Locally, SMDHU is at the high end of elevated cases within the province, and there continues to be a dramatic increase in the number of cases across Simcoe Muskoka. In response, SMDHU has just issued and amended 3 letters of instruction for businesses, organizations, and places of worship, reiterating the need for comprehensive safety plans, active screening of staff and patrons, and face coverings while indoors. Town staff are reviewing the impacts of these instructions with SMDHU staff. SMDHU has also released an updated letter of instruction for recreational facilities. In addition to its prior requirement that coaches and volunteers over the age of 12 will require proof of vaccination, Effective December 8th, 2021, anyone entering the facility over the age of 12 will have to provide proof of first dose. By February 16th, 2022, all persons aged 12 and up will have to show proof of having received both doses, with a 12-week grace period following the child's 12th birthday. Valid exemptions will still apply, and town staff are meeting to discuss operationalizing these new letters of instruction. Finally, Dr. Gardner has also issued a Section 22 order under the Health Protection and Promotion Act requiring children who are not fully vaccinated and who live in the same house as a close contact to follow the same isolation recommendations as the close contact and not leave their property unless it is to go for testing or to seek necessary medical attention. In other town updates, the Innisfil Recreational Complex's Gold Rink will reopen in early December, and live streaming is now up and running for Stroud Arena for those that aren't able to attend in person. Communications is working on enhanced signage for patrons and staff at arenas, and drop-in holiday skates with limited capacity are available in December. The winter program guide is also being developed with both in-person and virtual options. For the time being, we have paused the exploration of returning to in-person council meetings based on the advice from the health unit to remain virtual, and also as we continue to see the rising case counts. Finally, the Idea Lab and Library is preparing updated procedures for warming centers under SMDHU's guidance.
Thank you, Ms. Ray. And yes, it is a little concerning to see the numbers in Simcoe Muskoka right now. Throughout the pandemic, I sit on the Simcoe Muskoka District Board of Health, and throughout the pandemic, we've always been at about half of the rate of the province. So whatever the transmission rate was of the province, we were half of that. Right now, we're double the transmission rate of the province. So when we've this last week had the most cases in all of Ontario, and even considering, compared to Toronto or York Region, which is concerning. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But thank you very much, Ms. Ray, for your report and update. And now I'll go back to the item we were on, which was the Remembrance Day Committee and Councillor Van Berkel. So you were not pulling it, but if there are any other comments or questions regarding the Remembrance Day Committee meeting, Councillor Orsatti?
Not any comments other than thank you to the committee for all the work that they put behind this for the town of Innisfil. The services, that were at Cookstown and throughout the Legion, and then there was another one at Sandy Cove. I was happy, very proud to represent the town of Innisfil in the city of Barrie, and it was very well received, a very heartfelt recognition of veterans, and I just want to say thank you to everyone for that.
Thank you, Councillor, and I'll add to that and thank the committee and you, Councillor Van Berkel, for all your work on that. It was especially heartwarming to visit the renovations at the Cookstown Cenotaph this year. It looks wonderful, and also that there were 5 different legions represented at the Cookstown Cenotaph this year. So that was very good, and the Sandy Cove service was equally as touching. So thank you to the committee for your hard work. Next, we'll go to staff reports for action. So C1 is the proposed fireworks bylaw amendments. Deputy Mayor Davidson.
I'd like to pull it, please.
Thank you. Item C2, the proposed noise bylaw amendments. C3, the proposed ATV bylaw amendments. Councillor Orsatti, refer to committee.
Yes, please.
C4, the development charges bylaw recommendations. C5, the site alteration exemption request. Councillor Fowler. Refer to committee?
No, Your Worship. I just want to make a quick comment, if I may. I'd like to give town staff credit
for this report. I've gone over it in great detail. I've gone over the actual site in person, and what they're looking to do in the grand scheme of things with this is save a lot of complaints to the town. The wear and tear on the roads, the route, which is in the subdivision going across the street of Lockhart, everything appears to be really well thought out. It's forward thinking in regards to the fact that it reduces the amount of trucks going through the town, and it minimizes the disturbance to the surrounding neighborhood. So I really support this. This is really well thought out. So just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor. Item C6, the request to lift holding provision on part lot control exemption for ASA developments. C7, the decorative winter lighting enhancements on Innisfil Beach Road. Councillor Arsati, refer to committee.
Yes, please.
Thank you. D is staff reports for information. D1, the community needs assessment update, which we had a wonderful presentation on earlier. D2, opportunities for introducing administrative monetary policies. Yes. Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Your Worship. When we come back with an official report of the cost assessment, there's one thing I would just like added if possible to it. If you take a look at it, we're looking at potentially setting up a new branch of town management. However, I would just like clarification if it's going to be similar in nature to the bylaw situation. From my understanding, bylaw in essence pays for itself through the fines that are issued and whatnot. So I'm wondering if we can achieve a similar goal like this, where we can actually move things along in a different manner and actually not put an extra burden on the taxpayer in the process.
So I'm going to suggest we pull that if we could then, Councillor Feller, because it sounds like that could generate some debate. Thank you. Items E is bylaws. So the first bylaw was regarding parking. E1, Councillor Nicol.
Your Worship, I don't need to pull this. I was just going to comment that just so happy to see thank staff for handling this so quickly for short drive and so efficiently ahead of the upcoming ice fishing season. So I don't want to slow us down any other way. Thanks.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, did you want to pull it, or were you same comment? Okay, thank you. Correspondence for action is item F. There's none received. G, correspondence for information, the library board minutes and the county council highlights from November the 9th. Seeing none, we'll then look at the consent list recommendation. So we have items.
Excuse me, Your Worship.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm sorry. You were going too quick, and I don't think you saw my hand up for item C4. I didn't want to pull it, and I know council has moved by it. I just had one question for staff that we had asked before about the affordable housing, and I'm just wondering, where does that fit in here? Because I didn't see it in the staff report, and whether I'm missing that for the
Thank you. Thanks. So why don't we pull that one too then? Can I ask clerks to add C4? And sorry, I'll try to go a little slower. I apologize. C7 and D2. All right. Could I ask Councillor Payne and Councillor Nicol to move and second the recommendation with the lists, with the items to be pulled to committee of the whole? All those in favor? That's carried. So now to resolve into committee the whole will be Deputy Mayor Davidson and Councillor Ices. All those in favor? That is carried. And then we'll move on to the items that the first item being B1, and that was pulled by Councillor Nicol.
Your Worship, I didn't have a seconder. If I can just get on the floor, I don't know that I want to change the recommendation. Just want to have some good debate or discussion about it if possible. Councillor Fowler, thank you. Just for clarification, obviously, I think we had a bit of discussion going there as well with the delegation or the presentation from Mark and Janessa Mata. Just for clarification, I guess with staff, I don't ever recall a listed property progressing to a designated status. And this building, this house is a stunning example of Innisfil's heritage. And I believe this is to identify that, and plus to protect it against any possible demolition in the future, or to at least stall that. I just want to make sure that I understand that properly as well too, that this is listed, and I can't remember myself ever having a building that went from listed to designated since I've been here anyway. So just clarification on staff, sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Nordstrom.
Thank you, through Mayor, to Councillor Nichols' question. You are correct. A property can be listed and never progress to a designation. Also, the alternative is true. A property can be designated without being listed first. Really, the listing is a mechanism that pays attribute to the fact that there is interest in the property. It has cultural heritage interest, and that if a permit comes in to demolish, then council has the opportunity, staff and council have the opportunity to look further into whether that upgrade to a designation is necessary. But a property can be listed and remain listed without a designation. That's not a foregone conclusion.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Asadi and then Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you. I think, it was sort of clarified before that the listing really is that the homeowner, they must preserve the outside exterior of the building, but there's no restrictions on the inside. And as you had just said, Ms. Nordstrom, that really it protects the demolition of that building. So if there ever was an application to demolish it, it protects it. And if I've only lived in Innisfil 32 years, but I remember the house going down where the Canadian Tire is, and the house going down on the 20th, where the No Frills subdivision is, and being quite upset about that. So, and I think it's situations like this, it's not trying to hinder homeowners, but to protect the heritage buildings that we have, that they don't get raised down by when they're sold by a developer who would want to take it down to put houses in. Is that correct, Ms. Nordstrom?
Ms. Nordstrom?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Asadi's question. Exactly. Renovations can occur on the inside. The intent of the listing is, like you said, in the event that there is activity to remove, demolish, or significantly alter the exterior of the house or the building, or there's planning applications that would imply that alteration or demolition of the building could occur as a result, then that provides council and staff the opportunity to look further into whether a designation is warranted.
Thank you. Councillor Van Berkel?
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I look at it a little bit different. I don't know why the Heritage Committee, why they go and talk to the owners of the home and to see if they can put it on. And if the homeowners are adamant that they don't want to get on there, why do they bring it? Why don't you make these recommendations anyway? I mean, obviously this young couple, they're worried, they're scared. I mean, they probably don't understand it, but they are scared. And, they've been told by their real estate agent that, don't do it and everything else. They just bought the house 2 weeks ago. And now all of a sudden, the Heritage Committee comes along and says, you got to put it on the register. They said, no, we don't want it there. Why is it here at council tonight? I mean, if they say no, if I buy something, it's mine. I just don't understand it. Why is this coming to council when they are so adamant about not wanting it there?
Thank you, Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I understood from the manager of planning, she said that a house can be designated without being listed. So I'm not too sure what the purpose of the listing is if a house can be designated, which would stop the demolition of the house. So if I can just get an answer to that, I'd appreciate it.
Ms. Nordstrom?
Thank you, Mayor Dolan, to Councillor Waters' question. Yeah, so the Heritage Act has for some time now allowed for these sort of two different streams, and the designation bylaw is one that goes through a bit of a more formal process to say that this has been looked at and we recommend that it be designated, and council makes that decision, and then there's an appeal period or appeal process for that. The listing is there that in the event that this homeowner sells to a different homeowner or and a demolition permit comes in, it just provides that window of opportunity to decide whether to designate it. And in terms of why we would do that, in whether a current property owner is in favor of it or not, is that, you know, heritage properties and properties of heritage and cultural value are provincially mandated and something that is of the public interest and not necessarily of one individual property by property interest. So the Heritage Committee is sort of acting in the role that they've been appointed to say that this does have some merit to being listed, so that in the event that there is something that could threaten its existence in the long term, that we have the opportunity, council and staff, to say whether it is worthy of the more formal designation and the protection that goes along with a formal designation.
Thank you. Follow up, Councillor Waters.
Yes, it seems that the listing kind of gives us a heads up in terms of that we know about the property, and that we, you know, if a permit comes across our desk to raise a flag of whether it should be designated. So my question is there not a way just to in-house flag the property so that we know that if any permits come in with it, that we can quickly move to a designation as opposed to having to list it first of all and then designate it?
I think that's what this process is for. So it flags it so that if there is something come forward, but I'll let Ms. Nordstrom answer. Sorry.
Yep, thank you, Mayor. Through you to Councillor Waters' follow-up question is exactly that is the flagging mechanism that allows us to look further into it if a permit comes in.
Thank you. I have Councillor Payne, Councillor Ices, then Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. After all of this, we're just going back and forth here. I just wanted to mention to, I think it was Councillor Van Berkel, that we don't insist that they do put it on the registry. Putting it on, listing it is I think a great idea, but they're not. We don't force anyone to do anything with their home if they don't want to do it. I just want to make that clear, that that's not what we're all about. It's just wanting to get it on a list so it can be protected as much as possible, instead of being torn down by a developer or whatever. So I just don't want I don't want anybody to think that we're being mean to anyone. This is just something to protect the heritage of the home.
Thanks, Councillor. So just to clarify, you're saying, because the Heritage Act does actually give the Heritage Committee that right, but you're saying our Heritage Committee has a softer hand.
Yeah, we do. We try to anyway. We really do try to do it, and we just like to preserve our heritage in Innisfil, and hopefully the people that buy the homes will have the same feelings, that, you know, they want to protect it as well. So, but that's up to them.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Payne. Councillor Ices.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Just in recognizing the concerns that the owners have on this property, I'm just curious procedurally what our role is as council at this stage. On the agenda, it says this report is just received for information. So am I assuming that this listing is kind of a done deal, that if council wished to not have it listed, we would have that option? Or is this procedurally, these are just comments and the listing happens and the time would come for us to decide would be when it's designated? Just that was my question on this.
Thank you. Clerk Parkin.
Thank you, Worship, through you to Councillor Ices. So council is being asked to consider adding this property to the list tonight by the Heritage Committee. So on the agenda, you're right, it originally had said just to receive for information. That was just a clerical error on our part. We did amend the agenda at the start of the meeting tonight to add the recommendation that it be added to the Heritage Register. So council's considering right now whether to add it as a listed property or not. You still have the choice to go ahead and accept the recommendation of the Heritage Committee or to not and just receive the report for information.
Thank you. Then I had Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just for clarification, it's a young couple. They just bought this house and they're building a family and they love the house, but 3 years from now they want to build an addition onto it, big addition, which is going to basically, change the look of the house. Can they do that?
Ms. Nordstrom, when it's listed or on the register, can they add an addition?
Thank you, Mayor, to Councillor Van Berkel's question. Good question, and it doesn't prevent additions in the future. What would happen is there would be a heritage permit application applied for, and staff and the Heritage Advisory Committee would look at the addition and make sure that it contextually fits with what's there. But yeah, there still is the ability for additions in the future. Just whenever a building permit is pulled, it's flagged just to make sure that the integrity of what makes that building so beautiful is preserved.
Follow-up, Council. Go ahead.
Yes. So basically what you're telling me is that the Heritage Committee has the power to say yes or no to the addition. Is that right?
Ms. Nordstrom?
So yeah, the heritage permits that come in, it's more that the comments that are provided are from a design standpoint, not that a yes or no to the addition itself. Just comments in terms of ways to better respond to the architectural values or character of the building itself. But it's comments and not a yes or no.
I think that herein lies the fear of these younger people. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Orsatti.
Thank you. Ms. Nordstrom, just clarification. Without it being listed, there is no protection of this house being demolished in future?
Ms. Nordstrom?
Yeah, through you, Mayor, to Councillor Orsatti's question. Again, if in the future there was thought, if we had a crystal ball and thought that there may be demolition or destruction to the structure, there could be an avenue to designate it, to go right to designation. But by and large, yes, the heritage is the ability that gives us the ability to flag and make sure that demolition in the future is carefully looked at, or a designation. It's up to a designation to prevent a demolition of the structure.
Mr. Vickers.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to reinforce what Ms. Nordstrom is saying, if we receive in the building department an application for demolition of a building, we have an obligation to issue that demolition permit. And we'll do so fairly quickly because it's a pretty simple permit to issue. So if a property is listed, that gives council and the Heritage Committee an opportunity to review that and decide whether or not that's an appropriate course of action for the community's cultural well-being or not. Otherwise, that building will be gone very quickly and then it's lost forever. So all it is an opportunity for council to make a decision that they wouldn't otherwise have had the opportunity to make. It's just an added little gate, and it doesn't mean that the property won't get demolished or can't be altered. It's just an opportunity to have a second look when someone proposes something to that heritage or that property that's been deemed to be of cultural value.
Thank you, Mr. Vickers. Councillor Waters.
Sorry, I just want to thank Mr. Vickers for that, because I think that puts everything in perspective in terms of that house could be very quickly torn down if it isn't flagged. And so that makes me feel a little more comfortable in terms of why we flag these things, because if somebody does buy it and develop and is allowed to tear it down, it will go down very, very quickly because they know what can happen if it lingers around. So I'd like to thank Mr. Vickers for that clarification.
Thank you. Councillor Van Berkel.
Just one other question, Your Worship. If the house goes on, is listed, like what we're asking for, can it go to designation without coming to council? I would like, a clear answer on that.
Ms. Nordstrom.
In order for the property to be designated, it would have to go to council with a heritage designation bylaw, and there is an opportunity that notification would be provided to the owner, and the owner would have the opportunity to appeal that designation. Yes, the designation would come back to council.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, Councillor Eisses? You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm wondering, just for clarity on this item, if we could split point voting for point 1 and point 2 on the item. I think the report was fine as information. I just think we have the vote on point 2 is maybe more accurate.
Okay, we've had a request to have the motion split. Do I need a mover and a seconder for that, Mr. Clerk, or is that, no? Okay. All right, any other questions and comments? So we're going to call the vote on the first item, which is to receive as information the Heritage Committee report. Final comments? I have a mover and a seconder. All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Now we'll move to item 2. So the question on the floor is that 7001 County Road 27 be added to the Town of Innisfil's Municipal Heritage Register as a non-designated listed property. Final questions of clarification? Seeing none, Councillor Rossetti.
Can we have a recorded vote on that one, please?
Yes. Okay, recorded vote from Mr. Parkin.
Yes, thank you. I'll go through the list of members of council in randomized order. And if you could just turn your mic on and say in favor or against, and I'll mark your vote. Starting with Councillor Fowler.
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Favor.
Mayor Dolan.
In favor.
Councillor Van Berkel.
Against.
Councillor Nicol.
In favor.
Councillor Waters.
In favor.
Councillor Orsatti.
In favor.
Councillor Payne.
In favor.
And Councillor Eisses.
Against.
That is carried 7-2.
Thank you very much. So next item on the agenda is item C1, the proposed fireworks bylaw amendments, and that was referred to committee by Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Thank you. Your Worship, I'm glad to see this come forward. There's only one question I have on that one is, I think it's on page 1 and it will be item E in the report. They're asking for an 8-meter, let me just get back to that one, sorry. An 8-meter distance between between the house, from a house, a building. So I'm just going to pull that up. So I guess it's page number 2, actually. Go to item E on page 3, actually, 3 of 12. The staff seek approval for a set fine of $500 if fireworks set off within 8 meters of a building. What I want to know is if somebody's letting off that fireworks in the middle of the street, which is I hear is happening down in Sleeping Lion, they're coming out to the middle of the street to let off these fireworks. That middle of the road, is that 8 meters or more from the front of the house? Because if it is, then they can go ahead and let fireworks off there and bylaw can enforce the $500 fine. So I need clarification on that particular situation.
Mr. Vickers?
I don't believe we'd be allowed to set the fireworks off on public property.
It says under item 2C, prohibitions against setting off fireworks on land owned or operated by the town of Innisfil or in services.
So then bylaw would have full authority to impose a fine of $500. Great, love it. Okay, super.
Other questions? Councillor Nicol.
Your Worship, if Deputy Mayor wanted, I would happily second the motion if there's no changes as well, just to get it on the floor, and then just a couple of questions if I had, or just comments, I guess. Obviously, we're just receiving this tonight and asking staff to come back with further clarifications on this, and we definitely want to get this right. Just a question, and don't need answering right now, but wondering if we're restricting fireworks to just New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, and only allowing one day around Victoria Day, Canada Day, plus adding the 2 other holidays as well. We actually still have 6 possible event dates, so we haven't lost anything whatsoever. We still have the same number, and we haven't even considered any other culturally significant events. I'm thinking Chinese New Year, something like that, where fireworks are definitely utilized. I'm wondering if maybe we should be looking at even possibly dropping New Year's Day, because I don't know that New Year's Day evening there's a lot of fireworks that go on as well. If we're trying to reduce the impact to the community, by adding more, even though we're taking days away, it's counterintuitive, I think. But obviously we want to make sure that we represent everybody, and that's the balancing act that we have right now too, to try and make sure that we don't discriminate against anyone, but also trying to limit the impact to the rest of the public. So just comments. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Orsatti?
Thank you. Well-written report, and certainly something that draws a lot of concerns and has certainly been growing in the last couple of years. And I know that in the report, there was also, I hope when staff come back, that they'll also review the repeat offenders fees of, and that was also repeat and flagrant offenders of $1,000. I think that was a recommendation by our deputy mayor before. And I certainly think that we need to have bylaws that have teeth to it. And speaking of that, I'm concerned with the enforcement. We have, as even it said in one of the other reports, we have bylaw officers that are, overworked, and they have 277 kilometers to cover. And just when this comes back to council, I'm just concerned with the pressures on our bylaw staff. With the, we certainly going to have to look at this in next budgets in the staffing. Also, communication and education. I like the idea of the map. But I think that that's something that will be key in how we communicate this to the public and get the message out there. Or just my comments on it, but I think it's, this is a great direction that I like the direction that staff are heading to in this report. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Orsatti. Mr. Vickers, did you have any comments to that? regarding enforcement and how we might enhance that?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, no, we've talked, I mean, there's the discussion about it being after hours. And we do look forward to coming back to council with our strategy for how staff might grow relative to the community's needs and the community's population expansion. So, I mean, that's part of what growing is about. And so we are working on that. In terms of the strategies for enforcing the bylaw, there's been a lot of discussion about that. And some councillors have asked questions too, because generally our staff ends their shift at 11 o'clock at night. And in the fall, we're actually done at 5 at night. So, but there's people on call, and so we'll figure it out. And part of what is being proposed is that we have teeth to go in the day after, because it's really unlikely we're going to catch somebody in the act. But now the proposal that's on the floor is that we will be able to lay a charge after the fact. And so that's not something we had really incorporated before. So I think that's where the real muscle comes in that we didn't really have before.
Thank you, Mr. Vickers. I think that piece is a huge game changer. I do have a suggestion, though. I'm going to seek council's opinion. So before short-term accommodations, fireworks were just about the most talked about issue in the community. And I'm not sure, and a lot of that wasn't through council delegations or going to council meetings. A lot of that was through social media and people emailing their councillors. So I'm just wondering at whether or not we would want to receive and defer this for one meeting, just so that there might be a news article about it, and then it would get people talking about whether they thought this was the right approach. Because I'm guessing, but I'll ask Mr. Vickers that you don't want to have to come back with all of this work done for the bylaw to have us change it again. You're wanting us to kind of land on this is what we want in the bylaw, and then have you go away and write the bylaw. Am I right? Or are you going to write the bylaw and then want us to debate it and maybe tweak it afterwards?
Through your worship, yes, we're looking for some direction, just that you're comfortable with the track that staff appears to be on, and then we will write the bylaw and hopefully hit the nail on the head, as opposed to bring forward council that generates a bunch of debate. Here's Louise. She's a subject expert.
Sorry, I just wanted to add to that, Mayor Dolan, that there's going to be a little bit of work involved in drafting that amendment as well, because we really want to get planning on board to make sure that we define those new terms appropriately. And Councillor Ices, what we're thinking about is how do we define livestock, animal shelter, wildlife sanctuary to make sure that we're capturing those things appropriately. So I don't think we're in a position to come back anytime soon, Mayor Dolan. Like, I don't think that we would be back before the end of the year anyway, but if council does want to defer it for a week, we're in your hands.
Thank you. I'm just because of because of COVID and because we're doing virtual meetings, and I don't know whether the majority of the residents of Innisfil know tonight that we're gonna, put an exact idea of what we want in the bylaw forward. And I just wondered, most councils have, discussed something in committee, and then the next week they confirm it by council. We do committee and council to be more agile. We do it in one night, but we've always said that when there's items that have great interest, general interest in our community, that we can defer them for a week just to get people's feedback. But I'm at council's discretion or disposal, just whatever it is you want to do. Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. And I would echo those comments that you just made about possibly deferring this just to get some more public input. It was, there was a lot of discussion about this topic through the summer, and I think public would appreciate that. I did want to, after hearing some of the comments, I did have a couple amendments that I wanted to maybe get council's approval before we send this back to staff. And those were, first was in recognition of Councillor Nichols' comments. I know he's made those comments in the past. And when I brought this notice of motion forward, I originally did not have those holidays in it. As the staff report says, it went through our diversity policy analysis, and staff felt that would fit. But the common sense of it is, if we're wanting to lessen the impact, why are we at keeping the number of days the same? So my amendment would be to remove, I guess that would be item B on the second point there in the recommendation. And then and I'll leave this up to Mayor, your discretion, how you want to vote on this. My second amendment would be the item 2C4, where it talks about the 250-meter boundary around livestock lands. I think that's an important aspect of this, but I would like to see it strengthened to 500 meters. I know other municipalities have gone to that distance, and I went on Google Maps and measured 250 from where I know livestock are, and that it just doesn't seem like that's a big enough buffer when it comes to that concern. So those are my two amendments that I would ask for, I guess, a seconder on when the time is, and then we can handle that as you see fit.
Thank you, Councillor. So the beauty of deferring it is you wouldn't have to make those amendments tonight, but you could, it can resonate in the community. We can listen to what other people are thinking, and then you can bring your amendments to the meeting when it will be reconsidered, which I'm assuming will be 2 weeks of the December 6th meeting. If I could ask the clerks if is that enough time for everybody to think, to gather that input from the community on this? Councillor Van Berkel?
Yes, Your Worship. I think what you're suggesting is the right thing. I just, all the amendments, and they're all great. It's just my concern is enforcing the bylaw. It's like, it's, and I agree with Mr. Vickers. It's so difficult. They go off in Cookstown, or they go off in Lefroy or in Sandy Cove, and our bylaw people they can be 50 kilometers away. I mean, maybe we should set up a snitch line or something, I don't know. How do you enforce it? How do you enforce this bylaw? Because I had last Friday night, I had complaints about fireworks in my ward. I mean, I don't know where, and they didn't know where, but people complain. So how do you enforce this bylaw? How do we make it so that Mr. Vickers can enforce this bylaw? This is the problem. We could put in all the amendments we want. If we can't enforce it, it's no good.
Mr. Harris? Oh, you're on mute, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship, to Councillor Van Berkel. Some of the amendments in the bylaw do speak to strengthening our tools in our tool belt for enforcement. And I think another big component of these, of this bylaw amendment or these proposed amendments is an education campaign. That kind of in part with the new amendments, I think will help kind of strengthen, what it means to be a good neighbor and what effects fireworks do have for certain people.
Councillor Nicol?
Thank you, Worship. I think your motion to defer is a great idea to give the public some time to think about this. I clearly didn't even realize that the Lunar New Year is Chinese New Year. So we're adding 3 dates or suggested 3 dates. So my mistake on that as well too. So I think a motion to defer would be a great idea to let the rest of the public know what this is. And really, you know, that makes 7 dates instead of 6 possible dates in the past. So I think it would be probably a good idea to do that now.
Thank you, Ms. Ray.
Thank you, Your Worship. We will get a Get Involved page up to help collect community feedback, and we'll communicate that out with council. We'll try to make that a priority in the next few days.
Thank you, Ms. Ray. And I would encourage everybody to to ask people to read the report and comment on the direction of the report, as opposed to, I want this and I want this and I want this. Read the report and say, this should be strengthened, this should be changed, to actually tweak the what we're considering, as opposed to starting from scratch. So that would help us kind of hone our efforts into this document versus starting with a blank slate. I saw another card. Councillor Asadi, was it? Or sorry, Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just wondering whether or not it's worthwhile having a process built into this, because, you know, to think of all the holidays or how a municipality might change over time, that we may have another cultural group move into the process, into the area that may want to celebrate a day. And so the question would be, how do they come to the council to propose another day that would include them? So I just wondering, in this background check or how they're going to write this, that there might be a process in terms of how this might change, and so that if somebody does apply to add a day to it, that there's a proper process that it goes through, and that everyone in-house knows about that.
Thank you. Ms. Verbosch.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. And I was going to speak to that a little earlier. It was a really interesting tension that we were dealing with in the report. On one hand, recognizing the impacts of the fireworks, and at the same time, recognizing the EDI commitment that we've made as a town. So you'll see in the report that what we're intending to do is have our EDI committee actually come up with a process for identifying dates or dealing with applications that come in. That was intended to be included in a future report, Councillor Waters. And so that might be one way to address your concern, Councillor Nicol, with respect to 2B when it comes back to council.
Thank you. That's what I'm looking for.
So EDI, equity, diversity and inclusion, for those who haven't got onto all the acronyms yet. And I can tell you, in my neighborhood, more fireworks on Diwali than I think we're on Canada Day. So we are changing community for sure. So we have a motion on the floor that Deputy Mayor moved, and wondered if whether there's an appetite to defer. And I'll go to the mover of the recommendation.
I'm comfortable with the defer.
Okay, and the seconder? Yes? Okay, all in favor of the recommendation? That's carried. So go out and send people copies of this staff report, and hopefully get some real constructive comments back. Thanks, everyone. Next is Councillor Asadi and the ATV bylaw amendment.
Thank you, Worship. Councillor Van Berkel is my seconder to get this on the floor. This is the ATV, which has been under a lot of discussion. Councillor Van Berkel and I have shared a lot of pain with this one in our wards, and I think that staff have put a lot into this report, and I agree with the direction that they're going, but I really wanted I think we need to go through this through a pause, review and plan, which is what staff look like they're doing in the recommendations, because is the latest noise and complaints because of the impact of COVID, and parents have bought a lot of ATVs, because I don't think that what we want to do is punish those responsible ATV owners who use it for the fishing industry. However, having said that, and I'm glad that this is in the report, is an option 2D. And I think that as Innisfil, we become more urban. Sorry, I've got this, I couldn't get the live one up. So if you've downloaded the document, it's page 82. Option 2 says restricting the use of ATVs on municipal roads from March 21st to November 21st every year, within or adjacent to the Alcona settlement area east of the 20th, because it's easier for bylaw and easier for South Simcoe to manage. And I really think it's important that this is something that staff recognize that we may have to face to in the future as we have more development in Sleeping Line. I only have one piece of land left in Ward 3 to be developed on. And so it's quite, we've got a lot of intensification as we have more with the orbit. So I agree with the way that the staff report is written, but I really wanted the public to be aware that we may have to go to this other phase in the future. But this would be in consultation with South Simcoe Police and looking at the recommendations that are in this. And I just want to get this on the floor for discussion because it does impact in other areas. I've heard of other residents in Councillor Waters' ward. I know it's in Councillor Van Berkel's as well.
Thank you, Council. Councillor Van Berkel, and then Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree with the recommendation as well. I've had calls of people, that just the last day or two that have been looking at this bylaw that are, that have these ATVs, and they think it's unfair. And I'm kind of annoyed myself, that we keep strengthening bylaws because of, a few bad apples, and that's what happens all the time, and it punishes law-abiding people, like Councillor Sadi just said. People that use their ATVs to launch a boat or do whatever in the summertime, and it's really sad. It's really sad that this is happening. That once again we're looking at a bylaw, which I always thought was a fairly good bylaw, that we have to strengthen it for a few bad apples. And it's like that with every bylaw. It's the fireworks bylaw. Every so often we have to look at it, and simply because there are people that break the law. I think the bylaws are strong enough as they are if they are abided by, but obviously they're not. So I'm happy with what they're doing here, and I agree with Councillor Sadi. Maybe we do have to go to the stronger one sooner or later, but for the time being, I really do not want to punish the ATVers that are law-abiding, and so and I think they'll stay out of trouble with this bylaw. That they'll abide by the laws, and it's the people that determined to break the law. That's what this is made for. So I support it.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I like option 1. I like that we can charge a minimum of $185 fine if they do break the bylaw. That's what I looked in the report. So I like that aspect of it. But once again, I'm asking Councillor Van Berkel that repeat offenders, because it seems to be a few bad apples are ruining everything for everybody else because of the entitlement mentality out there, that if you're a second offender, that 185 again is if we can impose $1,000 fine the second time. So in other words, well, you get away with $185 to some people is like buying a chocolate bar. So I think we should have something in there that the second offender is 1,000 and it goes up from there. So you can possibly implement something in that when staff bring it back to us.
Mr. Harris.
Thank you. Through your worship to Deputy Mayor Davidson. So the $185 offense speaks to a Part 1 charge. So we do have the option to ask for $1,000 for a Part 1 offense. It's ultimately up to the courts to set that fine. We also have the option for continuing offenses or more egregious offenses to proceed by way of Part 3. So that allows us to summon someone to court and seek a higher fine based on the situation.
Okay, so I'm asking you, I think that's fantastic. And I think if we take a look at this and it goes through this, it has to get tougher, that we're not wussy. Like if they've offended a second time, we go at them with a court charge. Sort of like either you smarten up now or you pay later. As long as we can do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Harris. Any other questions or comments on this staff report? So there's a recommendation on the floor and it's been duly moved and seconded. Can I call the vote? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. I want to thank Bylaw for tackling some of these very chronic issues and getting them dealt with. It's great to get them dealt with here tonight. Next was item C4, the development charges bylaw, and that was Councillor Orsatti.
Thank you, Worship. I don't have a seconder, just wanted to get it on the floor, looking for a hand. Councillor Fowler, thank you. I just had a concern with this because I had brought it up before when we had the development charges at council and the presentation. And I believe staff were going to look at what the county was doing with development charges for affordable housing development. And I don't know if I'm missing it. I kept going through the report, but I just wonder, Ms. Webb, if you could help answer that. Thank you.
Ms. Webb?
Through your worship to Councillor Orsatti. So the development charges, the amendment to the development charges bylaw before you tonight is really a scoped amendment. So it was, we didn't fully open up the background study and make fulsome changes. So the purpose and the scope of the amendment was to take advantage and adjust our rates for the removal of the 10% statutory deduction. So we really tried to limit our scope to that and only change that. Of course, with that, there were some other minor changes made, but that was primarily the purpose of the scoped amendment. I do recall, that conversation coming up in terms of affordable housing. And there's two pieces to that. So in terms of the development charges bylaw, and a background study that would go along with that, council would have an opportunity the next time we update the development charges bylaw and background study to potentially add pieces and provisions to the bylaw related to affordable housing. So that's something that I know the question came up and staff are committed to, looking into that further. And with the next update, which will be coming back to council in 2023, we could bring forward some options at that point in time. Now, one thing to keep in mind as well at that point in time, anytime you have discounts or subsidies or reductions in development charges related to a particular kind of development, it would simply require that the town from the tax levy we would still have to keep the development charges reserve funds whole. So we just can't charge a lesser rate. Well, we would charge a lesser rate, but the town has to keep the development charges whole. So that's part of the Development Charges Act, that requirement. The next piece, so that's the development charges bylaw. We do as well have, and with the new legislation related to development charges, it has provisions in the new act to give nonprofit housing deferrals for development charges. So not-for-profit housing through the act is allowed to defer the development charges up to 20 years. So the municipality has no option to deny that. I mean, it's part of the act. But what the municipality does have authority to do is set an interest rate, if we chose, on the deferral of those DCs. So we do have a development charges interest rate policy that came to council within the last couple of months. I can't remember exactly when that was. And council did decide at that point in time that the interest rate on not-for-profit housing would be 0%. And at the time as well, we said the county was reviewing their policy on that. I did speak to the treasurer at one point in time. I'm not sure where the county's at with it, but we'll certainly be in communication with the county because ideally, we want to keep our policy aligned with that. But the town's current policy, it's 0% interest rate for deferrals on not-for-profit housing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Webb. And I can add that at the county, they did a full development charge study, not a scoped one like we did here. And the same question came up about affordable housing. And Mr. Hemson's, one of his comments was that is best resolved through community improvement plans. And so you set up a CIP directly so that the development charges from the affordable housing aren't landing on other residential homeowners, but actually paid for out of a separate fund strictly for community improvement. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the recommendation? That is carried. Thank you. Next was item C7, and Councillor Orsatti referred that to committee.
Yes, thank you very much, Your Worship. This one was about the decorative winter lighting, and the recommend, just going to go pull it up here, that it was from to be installed from St. John's Road to the 25th Side Road. With the funding out of council strategic initiatives. And I had just inquired about that. I mean, ideally, it would be wonderful to get our downtown area, at least from Jan's to the 25th. But I understand that financially and budget-wise, we have to limit those funds. But I felt that it was really necessary to not miss a very important part of this street, and that is Lakeside Retirement. We have over 100 seniors in that building that for the last 2 years have not been able to go out, see many loved ones, and restricted to the building. And now looking at watching the construction of the new town square, they haven't had a lot of joy. And I really felt that if we could stretch that just up to Adullam, or St. Paul, so that at least the lampposts outside of Lakeside Retirement, it's just that little bit further, from St. John's would bring a lot of joy to our residents. And I believe that, so I do have a friendly recommendation. My seconder on this is Councillor Waters. And so staff would be able to stretch the lights or stretch the budget and just bring it that 2 buildings up, just to include that seniors residence. And I thought that this was a great initiative to bring, residents have been asking for things along Innisfil Beach Road, and I think it bring a lot of joy, but I certainly don't want to miss the most vulnerable.
Thank you, Councillor. And yeah, that amendment has been made on the revised recommendation that's before you now. Other questions and comments? Seeing none, I just want to make one comment is this isn't going to be the big bang, like it's just a little bit, but it's a step. It's a step in the right direction, and the resolution talks about building on it in the future, but it's a baby step, but it's a step. Councillor Waters?
Just a comment is that at some point in time down the future, not for this year, is to tie this into a park light display. You go downtown Barrie and you see all the sponsors that sponsor the lights down there. I was down there in that area yesterday driving through, and it is really quite nice. So it might be nice at some point in time to expand this idea down to a park display. that leads people down to the park, gets more use of the park during the wintertime because it's not used that much. So it just, I thought I'd throw that seed out there and plant it, see if it goes anywhere.
Thank you, Councillor. And yes, the Innisfil Beach Park Committee is very keen, and there will be a few lights this year, but nothing like what you're talking about, not with the animation or anything. But I think what really got this conversation going, besides the Park Committee, was the Tree of Hope. I don't think we've ever had any initiative where I've gotten so many positive comments from something, and that was just string some lights on a tree. So it really, I don't know if the pandemic matched, probably emphasized that, but it was really well appreciated by residents. I saw a couple of cards there, Councillor Nicol and Councillor Orsatti.
Your Worship, I don't have any concerns with the recommendation and as amended there. I did suggest or want to suggest that possibly we look to enhance this in the future in future budgets. Last year, we obviously made some really tough decisions to save dollars during the pandemic, and we obviously heard from the residents that although we didn't see the value in having flowers and plants, the rest of the public did, and they wanted to see the decorative things. So, could be looking not just to the park, but Stroud, the downtown Stroud area, the Churchill area, helping Cookstown. The Chamber of Commerce does their own thing there. So I think there's other opportunities, not to take away from Alcona or from the Innisfil Beach Park, but we do have some other areas of town that could probably benefit from a little, if it's some decorative lights at this time of year would probably brighten up a lot of people's moods. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Orsatti?
Yes, great suggestion, Councillor Nicol. I think throughout all the town, we need to bring joy. I just, in this, it's staff that brought this report together. So I think the fact that they recognize that and trying to look at what we can do to start the initiative. So kudos to staff. We have to vote on many items that, are quite controversial and hot topics, but this is the one that is a joy moment. And I would love to see this expanded throughout all of Innisfil. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Thank you. I did reach out to staff this week, and I did get on this particular issue, and I got a great response. I asked how many dollars were in the capital project ADM 37, and it's been broken up. There's two parts. Next year, they hope to contribute a lot more money to it. So I understand there is approximately $100,000 available, and they'll break it up with next year, probably doubling the amount of investment in our lights for next year. So I'm glad to see that. And I really want to thank the staff for the response they gave me so we could answer a few questions. And I think next year will be beautiful. And I think, like Councillor Nicol said, there's Guildford, there's Lefroy. We put a Tree of Hope up in maybe various neighborhoods. That would be nice. So I really thank you guys.
Thank you for that. And I know that the Cookstown Chamber purchased their own decorations. They sold a lot of hot dogs to buy those, but they do get support from the town too. I got a lovely email from them. InPower supported putting up all the wreaths this year and decorating the tree. So while they had to put out the capital outlay, they certainly count on town support for operations. So thank you to InPower. I did thank the board directly, but I want to publicly here thank InPower for supporting all of the One Town, One Team working together. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the recommendation? That is carried. Next was item D2, and that was Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm looking at this report, and a few questions just come to mind when it comes forth. As many people understand, for example, with bylaw, the fines that are issued help cover the cost of running the department. So the idea of moving something from a provincial to a municipal level and creating new positions and creating new roles within the town, my question was initially, when we bring this forth, is it going to be self-sustaining? Are we going to be, or is this going to be something that we need to tie into the budget at a later time when the report comes back? Because we're hiring, if I understand correctly, with the town of Bradford West Gwillimbury, we're going to be looking into retaining the service of a consultant. So when it comes down to it, will the cost be able to be recouped through the services offered, as opposed to?
Sorry, Councillor, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Just as opposed to something going to the provincial level where it goes in the backlog and it comes out of our hands. This is something that comes within the coffers of the townships themselves.
Thank you. And did you have a seconder, Councillor Fowler?
Councillor Van Berkel, please.
Thank you. Ms. Verbosch.
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. So Councillor Fowler, the idea is that the town would actually be recouping more funds through the AMP system. So we're not envisioning an entirely new department. It's essentially an add-on. What we're doing is we're cutting out the overhead that we're currently paying for using the City of Barrie through their POA system. So by bringing it in-house, it's envisioned that we'll actually be recouping more money that would be fed back into funding CDSB. And the idea behind the hearings and screening officer, those are just concepts right now. We will rely on the advice of the consultant, but initial discussions with Bradford West Gwillimbury right now are that a lot of other municipalities have adopted this model. So rather than hire someone in-house or use up existing staff to take on the role of hearing and screening officers, we're instead retaining the services of someone where we're paying a per diem as opposed to a salary. So there's cost savings there. And at the same time, we get to keep them arm's length, which protects the integrity of the system so that we have separation between the body that's issuing the tickets and the body that's actually hearing the appeals.
Thank you. Follow up, anyone? Councillor Fowler?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. If I may ask, where would we draw from this pool? Where would we find the people? Is this a provincial pool? Is this a pool that will be created through a third-party resource? Is it specifically to Bradford West Gwillimbury and Innisfil, or is it something that goes like a freelance sort of idea?
Ms. Verbosch?
Ooh. We'd likely have to go through an RFP process, to be honest, Councillor Fowler, but other municipalities are already doing it. And what we're hearing from Newmarket has had great success with this program already. And they're using someone currently who is a paralegal by trade. So there are people out there who are already providing this service. And what I would anticipate is that those same people would respond to the RFP.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is a huge foundational piece that's required should we wish to get into the, the school bus stop arm, the automated speed enforcement, the red light cameras, all those things. Once they're allowed to be through AMPS, then we have the foundation already laid on the floor so that we can make that happen. So I think this is I'm going yay to this piece. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the recommendation? That is carried. And is that all we had? So now we'll go to the RISE recommendation, please. And that will be moved by Councillor Van Berkel and seconded by Councillor Orsatti, that we go back into formal council session. All those in favor? That is carried. And then the consideration to adopt the recommendations that we moved in committee of the whole tonight would be Councillor Waters and Councillor Fowler. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. And then are there any notices of motion? I have seen none, but I'm not seeing any hands, so no motions have been received. Announcements from members of council, please. Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Your Worship. As many know, for Movember, there's been an ongoing challenge between Councillor Ferragini and myself to placement of pride for township, I guess you could say. I set a goal for approximately $2,000, and I am absolutely flabbergasted by the amount of generosity that our residents have shown. And I'd like to announce tonight that even though November has not ended, out of the goal of $2,000, we've reached a new level of $3,000. So we're $1,000 above and beyond the initial goal. And it looks like I'm going to be delivering a Town of Innisfil t-shirt to a Bradford councillor very soon. So I want to say thank you to everybody. I mean, the amount of outpouring and support and is incredible. And the next council meeting or two, someone's going to see me with all gone. So it's going to be done again. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Other announcements? Deputy Mayor Davidson and then Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to bring attention that there'll be a pop-up happening at Friday Harbor starting this Saturday. It'll run till Christmas, I understand, Thursday through Sunday from, I think it's noon till 5 or noon till 9. I've asked them to send a note to council because a lot of it's going to be with artists and people from Innisfil that'll be doing these pop-ups. So it's a great opportunity to really see what Innisfil has to offer when it comes to pop-ups and what their involvement with Friday Harbor. It's nice to see it actually starting to integrate with the residents and the people that work hard in Innisfil. So just I'll try and check it out if we get a moment in our time. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Worship. I'm glad that Councillor Fowler was able to achieve it, more than exceed his goal. I did go online and did complete my pledge, so I took care of you, tried to help you out there as well too. What you did say was generosity, and with that, it reminds me that next week is the 100 Men Who Give a Damn in Innisfil at the Lefroy Legion. That's opens at 6:30, it starts at 7, it's done at 8 o'clock. The three charities next week are the Royal Canadian Legion itself, their Bursary Foundation, Seniors Wish, and Christmas for Kids. And I don't know a better time to try and help out others. I know members of the council have been part of the 100 Men before. Over the past couple of months, it seems to have dwindled a bit, and I'd really like to see if we could challenge some members of council and some others to come help out those that need it. With that as well, obviously your worship and myself will be at Cookstown Light Up Night on Saturday, lights the trees at 6, and then there's some a static parade that goes on, I believe, until about 8 o'clock at the library. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. I am very much looking forward to our drive-through parade this coming Sunday, and it'll be fun to stand on the float and wave best wishes to everybody during this time of year. I do also want to wish Councillor Fowler's the facial and head hair goodbye. I hope you have some good help with accomplishing that with your executive assistant there. So I look forward to that. The other announcement I had was with regards to something going on in Stroud. It's appropriate that we're talking about heritage and history at this meeting today, because part of Stroud Heritage is nearing the end of its life, and that is the mural that is on the side of the Stroud Arena, and it is decaying, and town staff has decided it's best to try and preserve that as best as possible. So that's going to be taken down, and the Historical Society is involved with taking pictures of it, and so they're being very thoughtful about the history of that. And, I just wanted to make that public, so when you drive by Stroud and you don't see that mural hanging on the wall, it has been looked after as best that we can. So that's going to happen very, very soon. I thought I would report that.
Thank you, Councillor Ices. Other announcements? I wanted to say I'm looking forward to all the festivities too, as well as for the first time, council will be, there'll be for Hanukkah, we'll be lighting a menorah, and it will be at Town Hall next to the Christmas tree after the lighting, which will happen at the Lakeshore branch of the Idea Lab and Library. I think the event is actually sold out at this point, which is encouraging, but looking forward to that event. And Councillor Nicol reminded me that there's also a group called 100 Women Who Care, South Simcoe, that I'm a member of, and it's meeting tomorrow evening. And the charities that we'll be hearing from is Empower Simcoe, the David Busby Center, and Little Blue Schoolhouse. And if any member of the community would be interested, it's we meet about, I want to say 4, but maybe it's more, maybe it's 6 times a year, and it's a great group. We're still doing ours virtually, but hoping in February to have an in-person event again. But happy to, again, looking for new members for that group as well. So seeing no more announcements, then we'll go to the confirming bylaw, and that's moved by Councillor Payne and seconded by Deputy Mayor Davidson. All in favor of the recommendation? Any opposed? That's carried. And our adjournment, and that would be moved by Councillor Nicol and seconded by Councillor Fowler. Thank you all. We got through a lot of work tonight in 2 hours, and really appreciate everyone from the town who is watching us live stream, and enjoy your evening, and thanks staff for all your very hard work. Good night.